Hello people, I'm here today because God, many years ago, gave me a message to give to the world. I tried many times to get out of it. And many things that have happened to me should have killed me so many times, but did not. And God will not let me go until I've given this message to the world. I want you to record this message, please, because if Satan can find any way to get it off the internet, he will. And you Christians will know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why I want you to record it. The first and most important thing that I have to tell you is that you need to love your God more than anyone or anything in the world. You need to love his son Jesus, and you need to love your neighbour as you love yourself. That means helping people when they're in need. Someone once said, all that it takes for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. If you sit on your hands, nothing is going to improve in this shocking world with all these shocking atrocities, because it's a pretty terrible place, and God has had enough. That's why I'm sat here today. Now, there is no better book in the whole world that you could ever pick up and read than the Bible. There's so much wisdom in that from so many knowledgeable people. It's a very, very good book. I'm not asking you to believe every word that's in the Old Testament, but you should pay special note to the New Testament and Jesus' beautiful words. Words of love and peace. Now, the first thing I need to talk about with you now is abortion. When I had my clinic, because I'm a qualified naturopath, I treated two women who'd had abortions many years before, one 20 years before, one 15 years before, and they were both carrying a lot of guilt over what they'd done. I've heard it said so many times that it's a woman's right to have an abortion. Well, God doesn't feel this way. God doesn't want innocent children destroyed. I know that'll upset a lot of people. I can't help that. That's what I've been told to tell you. And with this modern age, with all the birth control methods that are available, you've got condoms, you've got spermicidal jelly, you've got IUDs, you've got tubal ligation, clamping your tubes, you've got vasectomies, if that's what you really want. I mean, if you take the proper precautions, then it's very unlikely that you're going to have a child in the first place. So please, rather than abort, prevent, because God's got nothing against birth control. Anything that you do to prevent a sperm from entering an egg is not a sin. Now then, Satan is real, I can assure you of that. I've had too much dealings with him to know that he's not, and I also know that he's incredibly cunning and clever. Satan can pose as an angel without any trouble at all and give instructions to people. And most of what he will tell people is true. And a small amount of it is lies. And the lies are what he uses. He can even pose as God. Messages you receive that you believe are from God, you Christians, just make very, very sure that they are from God, because Satan's messages sound just the same. Just be very, very careful. It got me in serious trouble some years ago because he fooled me. Terrorism is a terrible, terrible thing. And the sad thing is that these extremist terrorists that are killing so many people, bombing them, believe that they're working for God doing this. This is not God's work. Thou shalt not kill. That's very, very clear. These people who believe this also believe that they're going to go to heaven and get virgins. None of this is true. None of this is true. You've been hoodwinked if that's what you believe. You've been brainwashed. Please, terrorists, think again. Thou shalt not kill. Tobacco companies. Why haven't you already got less harmful smoking like cigarettes on the market? You've had plenty of time to do it. There are plenty of ways you could have done it. The tobacco that you sell kills a lot of people. And I am a smoker. Not always. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it certainly destroyed my lungs to the point where if nothing else kills me, my lungs will. Thank you very much, tobacco companies. Now come on, get your act together and get something on the market that's a lot less harmful. Make a cigarette with less harmful products. I mean, I've been to the health food shop and bought smoking herbs. I tried them, and about 6, and one of those herbs was a lot like tobacco. It tasted to me like tobacco, and it even had the kick in the back of my throat that I enjoy while I smoke. You could use this or something similar and lace it with nicotine for us smokers, because nicotine does not cause cancer. Please do this. Yes. Illicit drugs. Please, people. You don't want to be slaves to drugs. Do your very, very best to get off them. Please. If they're illegal to buy and they're illegal to use, you're breaking the law every time that you buy or use them. You don't want to get caught for that. You don't want to be a slave to a drug. I used to think that for my sins of my youth, I could never, ever be forgiven by God. I believed that everyone else could, but I never, ever could. Until God spoke to me and just told me that I was forgiven and not to worry. But up until that time, when I was in my 50s, from the age of about 11 onwards, I just felt terrible, and I did not think that I could ever be forgiven. Everybody else could, according to me, but not me. Well, some of you out there might feel that way. Well, trust me, you do not need to thrash yourself with your sins. If you're truly sorry for them as I was, you can be forgiven. You simply have to ask God to forgive you in the name of Jesus. God doesn't want anyone to suicide. There's great sadness in heaven for everyone that is lost in this way. Please, people, it might seem hopeless now, but you do not know what is in your future. I used to be suicidal. I electrocuted myself twice by the mains, but God saw fit not to allow me to die, and yet death should have been certain. I've done other shocking things to myself as well, but God would not let me die. And the reason for that is so that I could sit here before you today and record this message. Well, some of you might be asking, who is this ugly little old man? Well, I'm just me. God's chosen me to give this message to the world. And that's what I'm doing. I've been trying to get it to the world since 2002, but I've been stopped every time until this time. Doesn't matter who I am. A talking parrot could give you this message, and maybe you take a lot more notice if a talking parrot did give this message, but please take notice. I have never been against homosexuality. It's not something that I would want, but I understand that other people do, some people. And I know that I've heard preachers on a Sunday bashing on the pulpit telling us that homosexuals are going to burn in hell, and that's not so. I used to say I've got nothing against homosexuals, but if they ever got married in my church, I would walk away and never return. Well, one evening God told me otherwise. He said, Malcolm, you're left-handed. 10% of the world is. 90% of the world is right-handed. Left-handed people used to be persecuted and murdered because they were considered evil. That's a brain thing, and not something you can help. He said, well, in its way, homosexuality is a brain thing as well. It's not something that can be helped. God does not hold it as a sin. I'll tell you why a little bit later on. Well, I'll tell you now. It is just what it is. You cannot help having sexual desires towards same-sex people. And yes, after God informed me of this, yes, if my church ever did decide to marry same-sex couples, I wouldn't walk away. Because I used to think it was offensive to God for them to marry in the church, but God told me otherwise. God wants peace on this earth, not war. He hates war. The God of the Old Testament, according to the scriptures, was sending the Israelites to war time and time again, telling them to go into the towns and to kill every living thing and to tear the pregnant women open. That's not what God's about. It's just not. God is a merciful God of peace and love. And Jesus came, and he was a man of peace and love. And us Christians know this. Jesus said, no one shall come to the Father except by me. And he meant it. There's nothing wrong with being a Christian, so don't hide your light under a bushel. Don't shy away when you feel that you're embarrassed to be a Christian. Don't be embarrassed. It's fine. If you drink alcohol and then get behind the wheel of a car and drive it, you're putting other innocent road users and yourself at risk. Why do you do it? Why do you feel it necessary? You've got legs, most of you can walk. If you can't walk, maybe you could afford a taxi. But it's stupidity to drive when you've been drinking. Moving on. Women should be considered equal to men in every respect, except maybe the heavy work, which women are not built for in most cases. Don't treat women as second-class citizens, because they're not. If there were just men in the world wouldn't be lasting very long, would there? Would it? You need women just as much as you need men. And they've got every right to be an equal in every way. Just as people of different races and colours do. You do not have the right to look down upon anyone, regardless of their colour or race. Because God made all men equal. I don't just mean men either, I mean women as well. You've got no right to look down upon anybody. I won't go into Moses' law at the moment, but tithes in church. Now, some people give very generously of what they've got. Well, the Bible tells us, and the New Testament as well, even in Jesus' own words, to give 10%. Not everybody can afford to give 10%. If you go into a church and you're scratching, yeah, by all means give nothing if you don't feel that you can. But you wealthier people, you often give much less than you could give. Don't be mean with your money. You can't take it with you. And the churches do need your money to carry out good work. Without money, they're strapped. They can't do it. When the collection plate comes around on a Sunday when you're in church, please, if you can afford to give more than you would normally give, please give it. Because there are so many good causes that so many churches try to help. In the beginning, when Jesus was risen and he ascended into heaven, there was only ever supposed to be one Christian church, not many. The original church was the church as started by St. Paul. Jesus said to Peter, "You are a rock, and on this rock foundation I shall build my church." Well, Peter was there for a while after Jesus ascended into heaven, and he was active for a while, but Paul was the rock on which Jesus built his church. He was a firebrand, filled with passion. And he was the one that went here, there, and everywhere, starting up new churches. The original church, unfortunately, has gone a little bit off track in some ways, but it doesn't mean you should abandon it. And the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is coming up to date, slowly but surely. And when you pray to God. You don't need others, such as saints or the Mother Mary, to intercede on your behalf. God hears everyone. And a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that. But I tell them, it's like the internet. You log on the internet. Lots of people do log on at the same time and get what they want from it. Well, God's greater than any internet could ever be. It's not a problem for him to hear every prayer. God gave man a free will. So if you don't want to take any notice of this, that's up to you. But I implore you to do so. Many years ago, when Satan got into my head and convinced me that I was getting messages from God, I committed a very violent act. I viciously attacked the one I love most in this world, trying to defend God and save the world from what I thought was an evil demon within this person, just under their skin. And everything I did to this person, I never intended to do to that person. I was simply trying to hurt the demon, but in my insanity, I hurt her terribly. And I've had to live with that. So just be very, very careful that Satan does not convince you that you're hearing God's word. He's already done it with the terrorists. Regarding disciplining your children, if you feel you can raise them without smacking, fine. But if it's legal for you to smack your children, if you feel you need to give a smack, that's okay. Let the child know why you're smacking that child. Don't smack in anger. That's shocking. Calm down before you even think of doing it. Maybe that smack wouldn't be necessary. You watched, some of you, the Super Nanny on TV and the way that she does it with non-violence. Well, that is a very good way to go. And you had the word of Jesus 2,000 years ago. God's given me the word again now to give to you. If you don't take notice of this, then I fear for you. People will defame me. People will say I'm a nutcase. They'll say I'm a Jesus wannabe. They'll say all kinds of horrible things. They'll accuse me of things. No doubt. Some people will like me. Some people will love me. Some people will hate me. That's up to you. I would like to see many more people in church on a Sunday. If you're a believer and you stop going to church, it's not that much time out of your day to go to church once a week, is it now? And as I say, if you can afford to be generous when the collection bowl comes around, do so. If you can't afford it, don't. God won't think any the worst of you for it. Mankind has done some horrible things to this wonderful planet of ours. This is our Mother Earth, and she's been pack-raped so many times by so many. How much do you think she can bear? Sooner or later, she's going to say enough, and that might be sooner rather than later. if God doesn't end all things quickly, which he may, because he's not happy. Otherwise I wouldn't be sat here right now. When you give your money, if you choose not to give it to the church, then why not find a charity that's trustworthy, that will give people a hand up, not a hand out. Money that you give can get clean water in third world country villages where they're normally drinking polluted water. That's a wonderful thing. And a little bit of money to start a home business, cottage industries. They could do leatherwork, carpentry, jewellery making, and many, many other things. And they don't need very much money to be able to do this. And the buying of goats and chickens and things like that, that really helps them. And we can do that. And that's one of my favourite charities, actually. You need to obey God's laws as set down by Jesus. Gentiles were never supposed to follow Moses' law. You were clearly told that in the New Testament. But you've also got to really obey man's law, because man's law will punish you if you don't, and rightly so. As I've said already, thou shalt not kill. That is the most important message in the whole of the Bible. Thou shalt not kill. And yet so many people are being murdered by so many terrorists and tyrannical leaders. This is not right. This is not what God wants. This is what has driven God to this point. Do you know this world has become slave to computers? And I tell you this, they're great. They do a lot of good. I'm sat here right now talking to you on one. But one good solar flare and all the computers in the world will be of no use at all. And you become so reliant upon these computers, world. What are you going to do when they all crash? We're not even going to be able to get money out of the bank. Regarding Palestine, God says he would like the Israelis and the Palestinians to get together, sort out their differences, and build a new Palestine in the desert. And I know people are going to say that's impossible. Well, it's not. Because Pharaoh Akhenaten did it thousands of years ago. He did it successfully, very successfully, with just primitive technologies. With our up-to-date technologies, it should be no problem at all. We call it New Jerusalem. People might not like the idea, but the way that you Israelis and Palestinians are at each other's throats all the time is not pleasing God at all. You can build a city for the Palestinians and have Palestine back Israel. It's what God wants. But he does not want bloodshed and murder. He wants peace, world peace. You, the Syrian leader, God says you are a very bad lot and you need to step down now. Why don't you run away to Russia? I'm sure they'll be glad to accept you. You're no good. You've done a lot of harm and you've done very little good. The people don't want you there. Just step down, for goodness sake. God says this. He speaks through me right now. All this bombing of the terrorists just creates more terrorists. And do you know why? Because innocent people always get killed, or nearly always. And when you kill innocent people, their relatives hate the people who bombed them so much that some of them are going to go and become terrorists. They're going to think they're right in doing so too, because they're going to see you as the bad guys. It doesn't work. Violence breeds violence. And the idea of clones, well, God says, why should he give a soul to a clone that man's created? Do you think that's right to do that? I'll leave that with you, scientists. And regarding this idea that soon we're going to be able to make people live forever, nah, don't do that. You live quite long enough now. You want to live forever? Become a Christian, a real Christian, and not just a Sunday morning Christian. It's a 7-day-a-week job. I'm sure my family and friends will still not believe that I have the message from God, which I do, because they've never believed up until now. I've lost friends because of what I've said. Science, a long time ago, split from religion, and when they did, they decided that God didn't exist. The trouble with scientists is they're trying all the time to find answers to questions, and in doing so, they have to look around God in order to look at those questions. God's staring you in the face, scientists, and you're too blind to see him. Let me tell you about creation. Scientists say that there was a single-celled organism or something in a pond that lived. Well, excuse me, but what brought it to life? Because nothing that we can do with lightning or thunder or anything else will bring anything to life in nature. So that's the first miracle. The second miracle is, whatever it is, if it's a single cell of some sort, it has to have a digestive system that works efficiently. Remember, there's nothing in that pond except water. There's no scum because there's no life. There's no fungus because there's no life. It has to take the dirt and eat it and digest it and get what it needs from that dirt. And when it finishes with it, it has to be able to excrete it efficiently, otherwise that will poison that life form. And after that, it also has to be able to reproduce itself somehow. So that's 4 things in a row that it has to do all at the same time, at the time that it became alive. The odds of that happening are incredibly remote. Scientists, just wake up. Wake up. A lot of you out there are atheists. Well, you've got the choice whether to believe or not to believe. It's like a 2-horse race. You can bet your money on the black horse, or you can bet your money on the white horse. The black horse is non-existence of God. The white horse is existence of God. You put your money on the black horse, maybe it'll win. Maybe you're right. I know you're not. But you're sure that you are. Why not put your money on the white horse? Because it's a 50-50 chance for you, isn't it? And look at what you'll get if you do become a believer. If you do start following the Lord's ways, the Lord's commandments. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Just a toss of a coin. And why is Christianity looked down upon to the point where we're not supposed to be teaching it in schools now? For goodness sake. Christianity was taught in schools when I went to school. Why was it taken away from so many schools? Why are so many crosses taken down from the wall? We don't want to offend people. Well, excuse me, but it offends God and it offends Jesus. Now, Jesus was the bravest man I ever could imagine. He knew exactly what was coming to him, yet he chose to stay in Jerusalem. He'd have seen many crucifixions in his time there. He knew the horrors of it. He knew he was going to be flogged with a Roman whip. It wasn't just a flogging with a whip. The Romans used to weave pieces of sharp bone and iron in their whips. That was the whipping that Jesus got. It would have torn the muscle and the everything off his back. It would have torn his flesh apart. And that is why he couldn't carry his own cross and somebody had to carry it for him. And then to be nailed up and to hang there alive for 3 hours. And he did that for us. That's incredible. That really is bravery. Really brave. Anyway, people, I just want you to wake up. Because if you don't start putting this world to right and stopping these horrors from happening, then God's going to take action, and quite soon. And I've been told this very, very clearly, and I know how, but I'm not saying at the moment. And he's going to end this world in a terrible way. You've been warned in the Bible, you're warned now. Straighten up, people of the earth, because your time is short. That is exactly the words that I was told to give you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. There's one thing I did forget to mention about Moses' law, what God gave me. In Moses' law, yes, it says you should kill people if they have sexual deviations. And yet it also says, thou shalt not kill. It also says that if an Israelite virgin is raped in a town where she could cry out but does not cry out, she is to be put to death. Well, that's pretty shocking. Another one of Moses' laws is, if an Israelite man rapes an Israelite virgin, he is to marry her and never divorce her. That's lovely, isn't it? She's got to spend her life with the horrible rapist, the person who raped her. That's lovely. And another one of Moses' laws, if you have a slave, it says servant in the Bible, but it's actually slave. If you have a slave, you may keep him for 6 years. You must release him in the 7th year. If he came alone, if he came with a wife and children, he may leave with the wife and children. If he came alone and the master gave him a wife and they had children, he's to leave alone, because the wife and the children are the property of the master. If the servant, slave, whatever you want to call it, says he loves his wife and he loves his children and he loves his master and doesn't want to leave, the master shall take him to the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl, and he remains the property of his master for life. When Moses' law was created, as we know it, God tells me it was created when King Josiah was ruling Israel. The Israelites were lawless and did whatever they wanted, and Josiah was worried about this. He got his scribes to write out Moses' law as he thought that it should be, and they thought that it should be. They weren't doing evil, they prayed for every law, apparently, according to God. Put this on parchment, skin, whatever, and they hid it in the temple, and then King Josiah sent workmen into the temple to renovate it. And during the renovations, this law, this fake law, was discovered by them, and they took it to King Josiah, and it was read out the next day. God doesn't want people to be murdered. God doesn't want people to have to marry people when they've been raped by them. God doesn't want any of this. You don't have to believe a word I've said. I might be a nutcase, eh? It's up to you. Anyway, that'll do.